Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Go to the church, though.
Tawali man, what's up?
Man, can you imagine people just dump everywhere? Someone drinks water and throws the bottle wherever.
Come on, Rogers. What else do you expect people to do with an empty bottle?
Simanya now, recorder. Do you know that plastics take at least 450 years to decompose?
What? That's a long time.
Exactly. Because plastics are made out of a lightweight and flexible material that doesn't decompose easily. And plastics everywhere in the environment cause plastic pollution.
What is plastic pollution now?
It is the accumulation of plastic waste in the environment, like bottles, polythene bags, straws. All of these contribute to plastic pollution.
I have been using them without knowing their effect.
Yeah, a lot of people have. Plastics are a danger to the ecosystem, both on land and in water.
So how can we overcome this problem? Is there something we can do?
Oh yes, we can reduce by minimizing the use of plastics, reuse by repurposing them, or recycle by collecting and processing them into new products.
Everyone wants to change the world, but no one wants to change themselves for the world.
How about we change our habits for the world?
And it starts with me and you.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital. The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
A very, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to today's edition of the Hotline Show. My name is Tulyahabwe, and of course I'll begin with the apologies for beginning a bit late. Sometimes some of the things that are beyond our own control do happen, but nevertheless, we decided to always show up on Monday evening and make sure we learn one or two things from each other. We thank you for being a part of the conversation, and as always, I've been joined by Major, retired AWICH POLLAR, who's also the Director of External Affairs of the NRM Party. We also have Honorable OCHIENO Joseph, who's a leader of the UPC, one of the leaders of the UPC party, but is also a political analyst. And today we're here to talk about a number of issues that have happened in the year 2023 as we prepare for 2024. We want to look back. What are those things that have happened that have shaped the events, or set the trajectory for some of those issues, but also what should we expect in 2024 and what are the things that we need to pay much attention to moving forward as we get into the new year. So I'll begin as always, and I'll begin with what, let me begin with you, sir. In the year 2023, as we come to a close, what is that issue that you think has stood out for you?
Every day, everything was standing out for me. 2023 has been amongst the most atrocious and horrendous years in political terms for me. I don't know where to begin. There are so many. In fact, when you sent me the confirmation for your discussion today, I was thinking through trying to see if I could note down in my head, or possibly even in a piece of paper, in a notebook, what the key five were. Maybe to stick to that, knowing very well that I would do key five. I know my brother from NRA could even rig 7 by adding 2 more, you know, and then with 12 we would have had a conversation and the evening is gone. But where do you begin? I think that that we're concluding the year is possibly good news in most of us alive. In a personal terms, I have had, like many of us actually had challenges. We have losses, you know, tragedies. My own UPC Bureau Secretary, when I was Bureau Chief in UK, passed on last week, I must say, Charles Oduka, fantastic guy. A former young, decent, handsome UNLA officer who found himself in exile with us. And so that was the more recent bad news from my perspective. So he was a bureau secretary, you know, when I was a bureau chairperson, and passed on. But amongst the many others, we had cases of many road accidents, you know, many deaths. In my family, there were incidents, but my family is now generally quite fine. And so for that, I am grateful. I have had deals with people, people with whom Comrade Rich and I were chatting before we came to the studios. You know, in this country, whom do you trust? Even Roger, you used to trust at the beginning of the year. I'm not sure quite much I can trust you, young man. But I hope I'm able to trust you more next year.
Thank you.
But so you make deals with people, very sensible, common sense deals, not the Betty Camille kind of style. And sort of this thing is such a culture that has been so much injected, entrenched on their people. You can't even send possibly a nephew or a little kid to go down the road to buy a loaf of bread, and if they find it 500 shillings cheaper, that they will be honest and tell you that, oh, by the way, it was 500 shillings cheaper, here's the genuine balance possible, they'll take it. So, you know, tricky, my country where it's going in the downward trajectory in terms of morals. However, and directly linked to that, the biggest for me, I was a guest on these programs. My good brother, AWICH, was lucky that he didn't attend. He wasn't yet a regular on this program. And maybe even didn't even know this television network does fantastic work. When we discussed Mabati, you remember, I think I was seated there, and I sort of nearly cried. It was genuine. You know, I know people in politics fake tears, but for us politicians, we are real. So Mabati stood out for me. It stood out for me because of the very nature of the extent of the whole thing. It manifested impunity. The manner in which these guys literally got money to distribute, got goats to distribute, and got Mabati to distribute, and literally shared all of it amongst themselves. The laissez-faire manner in which the whole thing was presented initially, even when it became a public scandal, the manner in which it was distributed, including for legislators, including some of our own areas without naming names. And you go to social media and you find some young people like yourselves, by the way, particularly if they think they associate with the NRA, you find people trying to justify one particular legislator who was alleged to have taken the money, not amongst the big names. One of his constituents, he said that, oh, you know, but these people, you know, he brought it and took it to a church, so it's okay. And actually, but oh, this Karamojong also, you know, meaning I was trying to justify, but also break the fabric of society, meaning divide us, meaning them versus us. And actually, in this case, possibly almost more or less seeking then to distance the Karamojong as these people who are like basically pulling out things, but it is okay to, moral degeneration has talked about it. So Mabati thing was terrible. But next, and another link to that, was that how it happened, at some stage I thought I needed to begin organizing my tie, you know. The NRA regime was falling. In most countries, in most democracies, a government would have fallen. And in fact, if it ever happened, thank Jesus, it can never happen under UPS administration. Certainly not in one in which I was involved. Comrade AWICH, had Mabati taken place, equivalent, under a UPC government in which I was president, in the very least, if I didn't sack all those guys, dissolve government, put a major inquiry, and seek to nationally apologize to the country, set up a commission, call all the religious leaders to pray for us and cleanse my cabinet, you know, almost certainly I would seek to have a government resign. Obote had offered to resign only if Semogere had genuinely, of course, they had no grounds, neither Semogere nor Museveni had any grounds about the late 1980 general elections. What I said, look, you know, if you're able to bring evidence, you know, yeah, the listing of cases, even if it had not been, disposed of in court, showing that you won the elections, we would resign. You know, was willing to resign and maybe have an interim administration. So Mabati thing was big. But there's so many things. So next to Mabati, and then you find 21 ministers in nearly, involved. And you find poor Agnes Nandu to, only being, and I think one other just ending up in prison. And everybody, including the finance minister. The finance minister who says he discovered, or he's told the things were thrown at the back of his house. So finance minister, the man responsible for holding the key to our national treasury. That is shocking. Finally, on Mabati, why my tears? You walk across every part of Kampala, and every major road crossing, particularly traffic lights, you find these young children, and sometimes adults, but predominantly young children carrying children. And some of them are genuine young mothers, meaning less than teenage mothers with children. And you see the state of these people. You see the extent of their vulnerability. I have written on Karamoja, and I've also written on strict children. I thought, Comrade AWICH, that beyond whatever else happened about the Mabati saga, that post-Mabati, I really hope it's not an end, we're going to have a national debate that would have brought Karamoja onto the formal national table. We have genuinely rigorous conversation across the political divide as a nation state, review our conscience, and possibly find a Karamoja, long-term Karamoja solution of programs. It hasn't happened. The debate hasn't happened. So these are people that all the ministers and all the NRAs, and I'm sure even which sees these things, you come into the streets of Kampala and you see them in the morning, see them in the afternoon, see them in the evening. And this is the things that normally when I reach, because for me I fear violence and I fear, so sometimes, with respect, sometimes when I see people who are very unwell, you know, maybe people who are disabled, I avoid seeing them, I avoid sight of them because it really traumatizes me. So you see these children, we see these people every morning and every evening. People who are ministers and policymakers, rich, extremely rich, many of them stolen money. And you steal from the poorest of the poor. That shocks me.
Thank you so much for that. But in fact, on that very issue, I wanted also to get your thought. Mabati, I think, is one of the scandals for the century. Okay, for the decade, to be fair. for the decade. One of those, in my lifetime, maybe it's just, I'm not trying to excuse my ignorance, maybe there has been others, but I've not seen a scandal that has had one of majorly the biggest people in government, the Minister of Finance, and then the State Minister of Finance. You have all of those ministers, you have even a Speaker of Parliament, you have all of these people included. What do you think, what do you have to say about that?
Of course, we have had many challenges. As I've always said, a country is a unit like any other family unit. Therefore, you are bound to have contradictions. I think I was talking somewhere and somebody said this family didn't have contradiction. I said, then you have an utopian family, a dream family, which we can't achieve in reality. And I can't try to wish for it because nothing like that exists. So contradictions have come, many challenging ones. And if I was to mention those I thought I would be the devil's advocate, and I'm not ready to be the devil's advocate. I can mention such challenges when I'm in an NRM meeting. So I will be in the right forum. But now if I put those challenges, I would be doing what my friends should be doing. But there are many challenges, we admit. Now, I also like to say something about this year. Year 2023, first of all, I begin from a point that no news is good news. No news is good news because bad news travel faster than good news. So I would be okay if this year 2023 we actually had no news. I would be fine with it because no news is good news.
But our government creates news for us every day.
In America, they believe that newspaper or news making, the press can make you a dog or a king. So you should actually avoid the press because it can work either way. So I was not hunting so much for events, but as it is that one thing I know for the year is that, and I'm trying to put it institutionally, not event by event. Institutional, I think we have done very well on freedom of the press. Freedom of the press, my friend here, the Congress guy, has moved nearly to every media house and spitting fire. And for those who are watching this from Canada and America and wherever, you know now that freedom of expression exists in Uganda.
But there's no freedom after expression.
There is freedom after expression because nobody has touched him. And remember, remember that this freedom of press or freedom of speech is not under Article 44. Under Article 44 only talks of 4 rights: freedom from slavery, freedom from torture, freedom from, right to habeas corpus, and right to be heard in administrative decisions or courts. And those are the non-derogatable rights. But freedom of expression can be regulated. It's not under Article 44. But here it is. People have in all media houses in Kampala. And I'm telling those who are watching from abroad, if they ever tell you Museveni is a dictator, see from this freedom of press. So that is an occurrence of the year. The other thing is, can we interrogate that one just a little bit? So freedom of speech. Yes.
Now the thing is, given people can speak what they want, I think to an extent that has been allowed. Except after that speech, majority of the people have not, especially if what they're saying is not entirely in the favor of the government, it has not been treated with the freedom you have given. It doesn't reflect like it's a freedom, like someone has a right to speak about certain things.
I have just given you an example of him. He has been in all media houses. Have you seen him stumble? Have you seen him fall down anywhere?
It's only him. In a number of how many other people, including only children.
I've got a right to reply there. Yes?
I've been polite enough to let you guys flow in your praise. I wish you could let me also flow. So that is one thing over the year, and I hope next year, as a party, as a government, we shall let freedom of speech flow. Okay. The other thing is that as a party, we have worked on our manifesto. And we have done it in such a way that we could have the capacity of NRM Oye. No, we have been on service delivery. Our key turnaround manifesto being the Paris Development Model and the other flagship that you know. We have been quick to do it, and we are moving slowly. For us, we are not shouting NRM Oye, but we are moving to the people. We are yet to see the fruits. And the fruits is on how far we go to eliminate poverty. The other thing that I really should have started with, the event of the year, or what occurred to me in the year, is the strength and the health of our party president, President Museveni. His health has stood out. And this was climaxed in his recent pronouncement in Kololo, where he told the youth that it is on the account of my health that you keep urging me to come back. And that is why you are urging me to come back. So his health has stood out. He's healthy, he's strong. And for those who have called him to come back, we are calling him rightly because of his health. So the health of Museveni stands out in 2023. And he made that pronouncement in Kololo just recently to that effect. The other event of the year is a test to our resolve on corruption. I did this as an institutional framework as opposed to the idea of putting it like Mabati. Of course, Mabati is one of them, but I know there have been arrests of over land, stealing of land in Lira, stealing in quotes and quotes, in Lira and other places. So whatever has happened and others that hit headlines is still a test on our resolve. Are we fighting corruption? Are we determined to do it with all the legislations in place, with measures in place? So a test on our resolve to fight corruption stands out to me as an issue. And therefore it calls on us to self-interrogate ourselves as a party or as a government that this year a test on fighting corruption. And by the way, let me tell you, do you know that the world measures corruption by corruption perception? It is not, there is no measurement of corruption actually. It is how you perceive it. And how you perceive it depends on how it comes in the media, in the public debate. For example, if you choose to keep quiet and and don't talk about it. Do you know that Uganda would be ranked low, that we are not corrupt? Because corruption is measured by perception. The debate that you raise, what newspaper write, whether wrong or right. So a country's perception index is the ability to say it out, whether you said it rightly or wrongly. Therefore, that perception, which is measured by what is said, and I repeat, if you kept quiet in the country, you'd even be ranked #1 in not having corruption. And yet it is there. So corruption measurement is a perception index. Now, perception index has continued to raise. So we are tested, our resolve is tested. The other element of the year is death. Deaths occurred. Especially the most ugly one is a day a day after Labor Day. Labor Day was in Namatumba. I was there in Labor Day celebration in Namatumba. I talked to the state minister because the state minister had traveled to Geneva, where I have a network, because I worked in Geneva as a judge for 8 years. So this man was traveling there. He came to me, he walked over to me as a minister. Oh, that was his day, and told me, no, I'm the one who told him I was going abroad. And I would meet the people I had earlier on sent him. He said, no. If you're going there, ask the people you are going to meet who hosted me when I was in Geneva. I want to send a gift to them. I told them, these guys just need smoked fish and the rest. He ordered this PA, the one who was shot with him. He said, please, on Saturday, which is flying abroad, let us organize him a gift for the people who hosted me in Geneva. Did I leave to take the gift? He was shot there. That was so unfortunate, and it's again a challenge on our institutional framework, because a man was shot by his bodyguard, who ideally, ordinarily, should be providing protection. Security. So that is a death, and also the death of Keith.
Thank you so much. I wish that if you could hold it just a little bit right there. I wanted us to interrogate some of those. First, Mr. Ochieno, you wanted to respond, but I also have a question on corruption. So maybe you can respond, then I can ask about corruption.
It is shocking and almost patronizing, and I find it completely unacceptable for my brother to suggest that because I go from TV station to TV station, it means there's freedom in this country.
Freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech.
Yes.
No. Going around television stations is not a privilege, it's a basic right. Anybody and everybody should be able to do so. The manner in which journalists have been caged in this country, the manner in which journalists died and they were targeted, the manner in which the recent human rights abuses by including US and including proposals for sanctions have been linked to human rights abuse, some of which have been linked to the gauging of the media and civil society organizations, is extraordinary. I must say that only 1 month ago, there was an attempted freedom of speech, and so there was freedom of expression, isn't it? Just merely that Ugandans today cannot walk to City Square. City Square, that place opposite Mapera House. That is really the space, the public venting space. People can't walk there, number one. Number two, the next other space for people to walk in, Museveni has now turned it his third permanent home, is Kololo Strip. That's a space where we used to go ahead and vent, except maybe when a presidential helicopter or something is coming, then you're basically able to be just for your security. That's the thing. But generally, no. We can't. In Tororo, a demand by the ordinary citizens for improvements on road, this pathetic NRA track record on roads in Tororo, and in this case, Nagonga Road, just to level it up, let alone tarmacking it, which NRA guys interrupted us. We were supposed to have tarmacked it 34 years. I've said it on the program in 1984. 89. Until today, the road has not been tarmacked. The road is so bad, they're just like industrial area, potholes of NRA, And then people were beaten up, tear gassed, and 2 councillors, arrested. It is pathetic, meaning the ordinary people in my constituency, ordinary people in my district, cannot even just walk out of their homes and say, no, there is something wrong with our roads. In Comrade, which is on end of the wood, when actually activists the masses of them are related to UPC, organized to demonstrate about Lira Kamdini Road. My area, just like his area, I'm among the worst serviced by road networks. But here we're talking rights, and
Yes,
when these guys organized demonstrations, and when Lango parliamentarians realized that it was a good thing to associate with, they wanted to join the campaign for demonstrations. Museveni made sure that he sent money, organized himself, flew himself to Lango to go and calm them down. Granted, that was a crude approach to public services. Instead, in our Tororo, maybe because we're a tiny little group that can be got rid of in a particular way, of course.
I hope you're addressing freedom of speech.
No, yes, Toro
freedom
people,
of speech.
Toro people, people are banned and tear gassed, and 2 councillors end up in prison. That's not freedom of speech. Back to this thing, about my presence here. I come here as an expert, and I come here as a political leader. It's not a privilege. And I go around television networks as an expert and as a political leader. And in many cases, I go to many of these television programs because I want to encourage young, beautiful guys to become important, responsible leaders like yourself in an exemplary way. And so to use OCHIENO as an example for freedom of speech in Uganda, I know it might be a tempting thing for NRA, but something that I reject in Jesus' name.
And just a little bit to add, and which is a question to Major. What is the measure for the freedom of speech? What are the parameters so we know this is what it means, this is what it entails? So if someone has that opportunity, then we know that they qualify to have enjoyed that freedom of speech and expression. Because most of the times I've seen it, even if you speak something that about a service that is rightfully deserved by a citizen of a country, you speak with in anonymity, because at the moment they know where you are. It's another issue altogether. What are the parameters of the freedom of speech you're talking about?
Freedom of speech is the ability to come to a public media like this and speak like he's speaking. Freedom of speech is the ability to write on the newspaper what you want, which has been written. Freedom of speech is the ability to draw cartoons of Museveni, which they have drawn cartoons and nobody is touched. Freedom of speech is to phone in on any phone call in a radio and a TV. Every town council or city or town in Uganda has FMs. People phone in and call.
The RTD
every freedom of speech means, like in his case, who is a defined leader of a political party. And I wonder why he doesn't object when you say he's one of those. I thought he should have challenged that and say, I am the leader, but he keeps quiet. Maybe he's not, but he should have challenged you there and then. So a leader of a national party like that, he goes from place to place. I have not seen him thanking Museveni in any way, but he speaks it everywhere and he works. So it is far and wide, and it is being seen here, including cartoons, where people have drawn cartoons of Museveni and nobody is arrested.
But also, Major, I think it's not for Museveni to give. It's a right people deserve. It's not one that Museveni should stand and say, no, now you can speak, now you cannot. It happens, people do that. But it doesn't make it right that he must be able to determine when you speak and when you don't. Because I think, as an individual, that it's even healthy when
particularly because considering his pathetic track record, meaning Mr. Museveni, yes.
You see, we are not talking about, let us not go into that topic, because it is a long topic, whether or not Museveni derives it. But what we are saying, does it exist, does it not? It does exist. Now, if you're talking about whether Museveni grants it or not, I've already told you, if it is not granted, why isn't it under Article 44? Why is it provided under other article? Rights develop. And therefore, because it developed, it is the state to guarantee that it exists. Right did not start since time immemorial. There was a time when you could not have, slaves didn't have rights. You couldn't say, were they not human beings? There was a time when kings had different rights with their subjects. Were they not human beings? So rights have been developing. And therefore, when a state preserves and enforces it, you give thanks to those states. And not all states do it at the same time. Somebody will tell you the right in North Korea is not a right in Uganda or a right somewhere. So rights are guaranteed by the states. They are there, they exist, and they have developed. They have never been there since time immemorial. Not since time immemorial. So a given state, like a state of Uganda, which is guarding it, which has put it in the constitution, which ensures that it exists, should be clapped for.
We do appreciate that.
Yes. So why are you saying that it is there, it is not Museveni, when it is protected by the state, enforced by the state, and the state makes sure that when it is violated, the court even adjudicate on it? Isn't that protection and enforcement by the state?
Would you...
So it doesn't fall from heaven.
Okay.
For goodness sake, it needs protection by the state.
It's true what you're saying. I do agree with you.
That
The challenge is this. Even if a right is given in Korea or in Japan or in Russia, the extent to that right is what matters. When one of the leaders violates one of those and decides this cannot be protected, you cannot say this, do we then clap and say we have been given this fund, we should appreciate that? Or should we say this is what we rightfully would deserve as citizens of our country? Because at the end of the day, in any case, any one of those people, including the president, is a servant of the people. Is that not so?
Museveni is not a servant.
I'm failing to get your point. I'm failing
Anyway,
to get...
okay.
Me, what I want to say is, one of the events of the year is that we have continued to enjoy freedom of the speech. And I'm saying 2024 should be the same.
Okay.
That is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I also wanted to ask you a little bit. You highlighted one of the things, especially to applaud the government to have done as the commitment and resolve to fight corruption. And looking at the index as it starts, because you said corruption is about perception and all of those things, it seems to be even about the things that we began with, that is first outright corruption. But we see most of these people who are ministers, people we should be deriving the utmost respect, the honorables in courts, the ones who are at the middle of that. How does that speak to our fight for corruption?
I told you that one of the major events of the year is the test to our resolve on fighting corruption. I thought I was being diplomatic enough. And I even added that it is us, NRM and the government, to interrogate ourselves. How far have we gone? How? So you really, that should be enough to say, I am saying, please comrades, can we go back to the drawing table, the drawing board, and see how far we have gone? Are we really scoring in this front? So that is how I package it. Okay. And I don't think I can do it any better.
All right. The idea is the commitment.
Yes. And in other words, I'm challenging ourselves that we seem not to have done enough because this Mabate thing is here. And that's why I kept on saying, depending on the methods of the revolutionary methods of work of our national chairman, this Mabate thing is not yet over. And we wait to see. Yeah. But that that is because of his methods of work. He studies, he takes his time, and he hits at the right time.
Okay.
I still have issues on the year, but I can't hear.
We're going to get to
if my party and the way Museveni dances and smoothens his themes, is there anything revolutionary, then I reject any association with that kind of revolution at all. But look, I think Comrade AWICH was right to express concern about my not responding to the question of my being one of the leaders. As part of this year, actually, a very important thing that happened was a Supreme Court ruling very definitively that Jim McKenna is not a president of the party. That, I think, was a very major political event and a very major national event, considering the state of Uganda People's Congress and the fact that it's the political party of the future. But also, it means, therefore, that it reduced the question of how many leaders we have in the UPC. Comrade AWICH, the only reason why I'm careful about not having that correction is that although it serves my interest to call myself president, and although it serves my interest to authoritatively say that I am the leader, which I am, that Supreme Court ruling still leaves the leadership of the party in question, because the elections that had me win, Walobiri swore himself as leader. And Walobiri occupies the office, the temporary office that the foundation has found for the party, meaning upon its leadership, I don't have access to that office. So it basically means that my office is also still occupied illegally by Peter Walobiri. So in which case, unless and until a competent court, in this case not the members, because members already declared themselves, and the electoral commission of the party, which should have declared myself, I have sued them, means therefore that the matter is in contest. That's basically.
So you are is right. You are one of the leaders.
So to be fair, fair, of course, yeah, it's in my interest to simply say no and argue. The only thing I normally reject from these guys, and very irritating, when they call Jim McKenna president. You know, so that one's actually an error. But to call me one of is neither here nor there, because technically it's myself and Walobiri in that sense. This is a bit of a complicated thing, yes.
There's been a confusion on.
And you see, for us in UPC, we are very fair.
So, okay. So we're going to go for a very, very short commercial break. And I wanted us to use this first half to be able to understand what has stood out for each one of us. And in the next one, I want us to begin on the point of our parliament, the National Assembly. Its performance, beginning with the activity that happened this very day at the Parliament of Uganda. How do we look at that and the performance it has, all the things it has done throughout the year? People seem to think that only passing laws is the role of Parliament, but there's a lot of things they're supposed to be doing, and some people feel unsatisfied with the work they have done. So we're going to look a little bit at that on the second hour, so don't leave. We're going to be back in a very short time.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes, it can. Although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be normal.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digital.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Welcome back from that short commercial break, ladies and gentlemen. My name again is Tulyahabwe, and with me is Major retired AWICH POLLAR and Mr. Joseph OCHIENO, who are both national leaders and belong to some of the biggest political parties here in the country. And when we were breaking off, we said we'd begin from a point of the parliament. But before we get there today, I saw something interesting on the internet. A minister, a state minister at that, wrote, Margaret Mhanga, wrote, I am going on hunger strike next week because of potholes. Gullies, swimming pools, anthills, rivers and lakes, etc. on every road. Are the potholes in Kampala on promotion nowadays? And then another minister, Rebecca Litwa Kadaga, said, come and join me in Makinde division, the headquarters of potholes and swimming pools. And then Emmanuel Dombo, who was the head of the NRM secretaries, added Bitabasi. That was an interesting day. That has been a highlight for me today. But that's not the topic we're here to talk about. We'll talk about roads much later when time allows. But before we get there, I wanted to begin from the performance of our August House, the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda. First off, before I put out my own things, today Parliament decided to award cars to the former speakers and deputy speakers of that particular house. And the issue, especially another thing that stood out was, and I quote, he said, you will be, that was Anita Mong, the Speaker of the Parliament, said, you will be required to bring your own driver who will recruit as Parliament staff. Parliament will pay that driver of yours. The car remains a property of Government of Uganda. Parliament will maintain and fuel these cars, but Parliament will, after every 5 years, be giving you a new car. Or in between, when the car gets a problem, you will bring it back and we give you a new car. You are property of Uganda, and so we're supposed to look after you. That, beginning from there, what does that speak to our priorities as a country, especially the issues that are happening, and these are the things that we are doing right now. We don't have enough budget for even to fix potholes only in the capital city in Kampala, but we have money to buy cars for former speakers who don't need it, must I add. If I begin with you, sir.
What do you want to begin with?
What do you think about all of this? And especially about what
this country needs a revolution. This country needs a revolution, and I'm serious. This country needs the youth of this country to wake up and rise up. This country needs the citizens of this country, all of them, to wake up and rise up and say no, enough is enough to NRA impunity. I think the car thing was one of the most insulting things that one can think of. But number two is a manifestation of how badly our polity has gone, and how personalized, how monetized, and how we've seen the death of morality and morals manifested by, in brief, perhaps Mabati, but generally holistically. To the extent that apparently I think in the Parliament release, they said, they counted, quote, speakers. And in fact, they started with Edward Rugumayo and concluded with the most recent. And they left, actually, Francis Butajira. So
no, he got.
No, he got. So now reading this from social media spaces, actually the Parliament took. So my immediate reaction was to ask, what about Francis Butajira? Only to post this thing and then see the other one. His name is there. But you can actually see the mindset in this country. People just think that this country is about NRA and started in 1986, number one. And number two, these NRA guys, they call themselves revolutionary. The only person who, if you sit with a little bit more, you'll find that he's got some, not necessarily revolutionary, but softly progressive left views, which is Comrade AWICH, you know? Anybody else?
Like him, by the way. Some people are giving me comments saying they like him.
No, he's not madly NRA in character, you know, although he drives a car twice my size, the car size of my car, you know. So it's actually extraordinary. So point is this, that for these guys to think about giving cars to former speakers at a time when we can't maintain our roads, we can't maintain our hospitals, we can't maintain our schools. One of the things I've sort of held back onto this year is to review whether or not how many fundraising functions I'm going to participate in. Politically tricky, you know, you know, but continuously fundraising for a public school, fundraising for a health facility. And many of the cheeky people who organize these things and call these things are people in NRA and people in government. And many of them people very rich, and some of the money they have is basically stolen money or public money. They want to go ahead and show off this money. And for you go down there, you're struggling to put on the table 5,000 shillings, your hard-won 5,000 shillings. Basically to manage the livelihood of a public service. It's now Christmas season, Comrade Rich and I were talking about how many new texts and phone calls we are receiving, including from nicely talk. Hi, long time, we've not heard from you. Meaning the next conversation is, how's Christmas and where's Christmas and kind of stuff. You know, but it's telling you partly the state of the economy, but also partly the state of livelihood in public services, including people who want to get a ride from you on your way to Mukono. The only former speaker that I would authorize anything is Francis Buttigieg. Because quite come to think of it, why would Edward Rugumayo get a car? Edward Rugumayo, Speaker of Parliament, and the recruit assembly, these guys who came by force of arms?
No.
Oh no, actually, quite sorry. No, Rugumayo was no sorry.
Anyway, I'll put it in context. No worry.
No, Rugumayo was the speaker of the interim assembly of 1980. NCC, National Consultative Conference. So actually, to reframe it, the only two people who would be entitled as former speakers would be Edward Rugumayo, Edward Rugumayo and Francis Buttigieg. You know? Beyond that, Moses Chigongo, which is what I was trying to refer, you know, the speaker of the NRA legislative thing, you know, that came from the bush. So what was NRC speaking on whose behalf? Not me, not you. You know? Fast forward from that, then you come into, of course, then the late, of course, if this was alive, then the late, the Mbale guy, the late Wapakapulo, people like that. All these speakers of an NRA organ, Wapakapulo is substantially respected, but was a speaker with Chigongo, the speakers of, you know, an NRA monolithic bush thing. These are guys we're talking human rights, and these are people who should be tried instead of getting privileged cars from us. It's an insult to them. And by them, generally serious about it, you know. Granted, you could argue that anybody who's been speaker, Comrade Rich, anybody who's been speaker post 1986, I mean 2006, after those elections, although monolithic, you know, you would sort of, you'd recognize them as speakers because political parties had been, you know, restored and the semblance of comparative polity. But then after that, why I'm asking for a revolution, and I can't understand people in NRA who claim to be leftist, you know? We pay these guys hugely, yeah? You pay these guys hugely. You give them 300 million shillings per year, allegedly housing allowance. You buy them new, very big cars bigger than cars that UPC ministers would drive. In fact, bigger cars than the car Obote was driving as president, you know, the most organized president of this country. You then say we'll give you drivers and pay them. No, I think it's impunity. But in part because these things are done without debate. Because actually, I don't know, maybe Comrade should correct me on this, whether this was matters that were debated, but I'm told that they're part of the constitutional provision. The NRA guys have tried to find ways or legal ways of thieving money, you know, and then reaching themselves legally. So these things, they made constitutional provisions, constitutional amendments. Which wants to intervene to correct me, I think.
No, I just thought he's giving you too much time and forgetting about me.
No, I was coming to you. And
I just thought he's forgetting about me.
If that is the case, no, he's not forgetting about it. I'll give you your time. Look. No. Honestly, it is genuinely criminal. It cannot be sustained in this country. That of the former speaker thing is the same as these things about former presidents and former prime ministers. NRA guys have argued, and I think I had a conversation, I think maybe not Cecilia Gual, I think maybe Wiyono was part of the arguments that was had some time ago, that they were trying to do these things in order to bribe these things off power. If part of the thing was to bribe these guys off power, you know, it hasn't helped. Museveni now, Comrade Rich is praying for his health so that he lives until 102, and we keep on living in the potholes of Kampala, you know, whipped by his son. Granted, I know one of their fear, and it's one of the things which is not spoken about. That clever, wise, country-loving Milton Obote died an ordinary man. But while Obote died an ordinary man in exile in Zambia, he returned Milton Obote in Uganda as a former president. Surely the privilege of monies that you get should still ideally by and large look after you. For me, I know as Obote's top aide, when we returned, if we returned with him alive in 2005, we were not looking at the state. We knew we were capable of living on our own, like I've lived on my own. Difficult, rather, you know, but we're likely to live on our own on the basis of the money that we get. These guys get huge amount of money. Now, it's bad manners. Making politics now much more lucrative on this continent, in this country, than enterprise. So in other words, if you want to be safe, if you want to live top life for the rest of your life, go into politics rather than set up a equivalent of a Facebook or a Twitter account.
Thank you so much. Major, also to begin from that point, I wanted to get your thoughts on the events today.
I give him an extra 1 minute of my time.
Of the events that happened today. And
before
you get to the content of the parliament.
I was just worried that you may not even give me half of the time.
No, you have the time.
First of all, there are some preliminaries you made and he made. Thank you so much if people tell you they like me. What they should like about me is the objectivity of NRM cadreship, which I try to portray, and all the good attributes that I can show out, please give it to NRM, but the bad one, give it to me. I own it. But the good ones, give it to NRM, because I grew up there. The other aspect Comrade OCHIENO says is that I drive a car twice, his car. That is true. I do, and I have many. But the point is that I have been so lucky, my comrade knows it, that I was voted twice as a United Nations judge, voted by the General Assembly of 193 ambassadors, sacred ballot. I won the elections. Each Kisanja is 4 years. 2 Kisanja is 8 years. I was based in Geneva. So by the time I was appointed to Secretariat, I had 2 huge, you have seen them.
Yes.
I have 2 huge Land Cruisers, devoid of any party thing. So it is true I drive that car, comrade, but you know the genesis. I went with it, everybody knows it. Now, that is a preliminary. About today's event. Today's event is a little puzzling to an ordinary high about the expenses, but to me it was not, not on the expenses per se. You see, there was an attempt by government to cure a mischief. When you pass a law is intended to cure a mischief. And this started with all the branches. Judiciary. There was a law passed in judiciary which gives judges a lot of payment up to retirement. Then the executive had come up, actually it started with the executive, with a law called Emoluments of Presidents,
that's correct, yes.
Vice Presidents and Prime Ministers Act. It gives rights to those 3 categories, to the extent that it even gives a water in currency point. Each currency point is 20,000.
Yes.
So it gives electricity, this currency point, water, this currency point, this. Now, if you see big Land Cruisers with number plate UG-Z, those are the cars given under that law, and it is given from public service. Professor Sibambi, Professor Bukenya, Mama, all those like, they get it. Now you see those big cars, but it doesn't have CM. CM means cabinet minister or MS, minister of state. Then you say, but this big car, who is driving it? It is under the law. So the idea, the mischief was, 1, our leaders should not retire as pauper. 2, to prevent corruption, because when you're guaranteed under the law, you know that when I retire, I will be protected, my social security. So the idea was to give this provision so our leaders are not tempted in corruption, they don't work as destitute, and we keep their integrity. That we have, this is a former leader, his is his integrity. So they passed the law under the executive, then judiciary followed. Then parliament followed, because parliament as a legislature. My worry with this situation is 2. 1, My worry are two issues. One, is it okay for somebody to get payment from the same consolidated fund twice? For example, His Excellency Sekandi is already catered for under the other act, the Presidential Emolument, with the same Land Cruiser CC and the same package, 60% of the salary of Museveni, first class flight ticket, everything, water, electricity. Then you create this under the parliament, the same car and the same money. How was the debate on the floor of parliament? That could that therefore means that whoever had worked in a particular place will subsequently get all the retirement? If, for example, Sekandi had retired as a state attorney, because the law provides that if you work to a given year, you are free to retire, even as a teacher or even as a soldier. I think the minimum year is 10 or so. Once you clock that 10, you are free to retire with pension. So assuming now Sekandi had worked for 10 years as a state attorney, retired, so he would go grab that one. Then he would get for the vice, he would grab that one. And if he had been a prime minister, he would also grab it and then grab for the speaker. I think there is a need to look at that. Then the other aspect is the retrospectivity of that law. Because the law validated backwards. In the emoluments of the presidents and the vice president, prime minister act, it did not validate past presidents. It only provided in cross-reference that read the law which was providing for the president at that time. In this case, there was a law of the 1964 which provided that a former president can get emoluments only by a resolution of parliament. Because by then, Obote, or I think it is applicable in Kenya, where even the president is a member of parliament, is elected. So they were governed under law called Emoluments of Parliaments. It is actually called Parliament Remuneration Act. Therefore, in the law for the presidency, you did not need to pass a law about the presidents which was before 95 Constitution. All the law did was read this law in cross-reference to the other law. So how does this retrospectivity work? If we make a law in retrospectivity, are we not now saying we can even make a law when you committed a crime 10 years? We can actually make a law to make what you did not a crime. Even if you murdered, you create circumstances. So I have two issues in this law. One, how somebody will earn from the same consolidated fund various aspects. You are earning under this act, you are earning under the other act. I thought Parliament could have provided a situation like when a person is covered under two legal regimes for the benefit, he should choose the higher one, or whichever he likes.
Or the latter or the former applies to the first.
Will apply. That should have been catered for in the law. So I have an issue of retrospectivity. But if the gist of the law is to address the mischief that we don't want our leaders to think of corruption, because after all, leaving this office, for example, the Prime Minister, Nabanja, if Nabanja knows I'm going to leave this office, I will not die poor anyway, then why would you be corrupt? If we want to say Nabanja is a Prime Minister, when she retires, we don't want to see her on the street, it is an insult to the government or to the people of Uganda, then let it be. So you would have preserved corruption. I mean, you have fought corruption, maintained the dignity of the leader, you saved their rights, economic rights. So I have no problem with this law because it has been done by the executive under the emoluments of president, prime minister, vice president, prime minister. It has been done in judiciary. A retired high court judge now earns 18 million when he's at home with his security. And the idea was to make this judge not corrupt, so that this judge because the judge knows, after all, even if I go home, I have money, so why be corrupt? Let me dispense justice. So the same thing if Parliament so thought by the leaders of Parliament. Two issues. How about retrospectivity? And two, how about earning from the same consolidated fund under different legal regimes, under different acts of Parliament? That is my worry. If somebody can explain that to me, I would be okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for bringing that to light, because I think most of the people did not look at it. Most of the people had issues with all of these small benefits. We pay your driver, we do all of these things. If we've given you a kind of fuel, surely you can take care of other things. But that's besides the point. So when we get to the parliament as a whole, and I wanted you to finish all at once, when you look at parliament as it is, how do you feel satisfied by their work? Is it just, looks like a busy, hungry lot? Is it just the lack of want of leadership? Is it some people are just not qualified, if not majority of them? Is it the lack of the atmosphere of free debate? What do you think of the character and the work of the Parliament of Uganda in this year?
Well, from my views or the views I pick from the population, that is confusing. But I think as a party, we do think that we have put our best cadres out there in Parliament, because we came up with a system of a very competitive way of getting the flag. So we thought that the competitiveness,
has done
the competitiveness, we thought, because getting a flag in NRM is like a full election itself. So we thought by this process, because the party could have come up with a constitution to say we shall appoint, we shall sit in a committee and select. And if that was the case, then we would select. But we chose to say, please, party members, fight for the flags, fight in quotes and quotes. So we think it is best. So we think that we give out our best in Parliament. But over and above, there is a complaint that maybe the size is too big. It's too big to the extent that it doesn't allow enough debate. Every member stands up. After 1 minute, they switch you off. So it has really put questions as to the competency with that number. So that debate rages on. The other aspect is that people still feel there is too much use of money in the electioneering, to the extent that money has overshadowed individual competence, even when we talk of the flags in the party. So I have always prayed that this son of Kaguta, called Museveni, has won many battles. I am yet to see he should win the battle in this electioneering. He has drawn his attention to it, and he has kept on warning MPs. Even recently when we were in Chankwanzi, he still warned MPs. But I'm still calling on him to really, among the list of battles he has won in the world, he should win this election, the money in electioneering. Because in my part of the world, I've seen during parliamentary, people line up and they give money in total contravention of the law. And none of the candidates complain. You know why? Because all of them are doing it.
Paying it. Yeah, that's true.
Lining up and giving money in a line. It used to be a candidate would speak and then tell the people that, okay, I thank you so much for coming. I'm giving soda to Mr. Okello. Let Okello handle your soda. It is not the case now. They say don't give Okello, we line up. You line up and give. So this has impacted on the quality of Parliament. So, and therefore you could see the debates, and I was in one of the debates with a member of Parliament who said that the members were getting issues from the newspaper and bringing to the House. It should be that the issues raised in the House are got by the newspapers. In fact, I think there used to be a rule of procedure which forbade discussing issues from the media. But now it is that. Why? Because of the competency or the lack of time to research. And yet I think MPs are given research officers. Yes. So it is not now enough time. So if you ask my views about Parliament, I would say those few things. One, as a party, we think we give our best cadres there. They compete. Two, we also note the size. It will be affecting the performance. Three, the use of money at the election is also an issue. It compromises quality. So with that, you can now guess the legislature as it is.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll have Mr. OCHIENO add your voice to The conduct of business in Parliament. The other day, and this is the other thing that is also happening, people are saying it out about the conduct of even the leadership of Parliament itself. There was a time there was a debate, I think one member of Parliament made a statement and the speaker was like, stand up, like the way you tell your son, stand up and apologize. I was like, but these are honorable members, honestly, that people send to Parliament and represent. What do you think of the conduct of the business in Parliament?
You know, earlier we were discussing the atrocious question of motor vehicles for former speakers. I still want to stick with that before I respond to you fully. A future UPC government in which I am involved, let alone leading, would seek to review this legislation, Comrade AWICH, radically review this legislation up to and including the question of former presidents. This was a bribe, a way of NRA coming with, crooked slippers from the bushes and coming to put double suits and double shoes where? At our expenses. NRA guys just deliberately did this thing to find a way, and in fact, on the question of the legislation, including this thing about former presidents, I will not be surprised at the time the Musevenis thought that by, if they gave the same provisions, I don't know in terms of the technicality of the law, and thank you for those provisions, thanks for those explanations, maybe they thought they would be, they would be making Obote and Obote's family rich, these cheeky NRA guys. But no, for us, we are fine. We are used to having muogo for our breakfast. It is genuinely criminal for a country as poor with, feasible resources, because we've got a huge amount of natural wealth. A country in our state where we can't sustain basic health, basic education, maintain basic roads, business and agriculture, are poor. One of the most precious communities are walking in the streets of Kampala like Karamojong. We can't maintain a Tororo-Nagongera road. The tarmac in Tororo-Nagongera road has moved from Rubonge Barracks, to this heart of Tororo, and we're giving vehicles worth trillions of shillings, to former leaders, some of whom have retired to their farms. Their children and children's children are now high court judges, substantially privileged. What about me on average, who still, the grandfather, will still have to find a way of buying, a spare uniform for my grandchild when come January, beginning of the year? Really? Really? And yet I don't belong to the most extreme of the people. No, I think this thing must be reviewed. And I promise you guys that the beginning of next year, I am going to make this a campaign issue around the country. And I hope I'll meet Mr. Museveni somewhere and look him in the face, and Mr. Museveni tells me whether or not he agrees with me that these are things that need to be reformed and must be stopped. It is insulting, including the timing by when it came and as it came. Your question was about precisely on
the conduct of business.
On the conduct of business, as I said. Seeing my sister Anita Among, treat legislators the way she does, reminded me of what I've always said, that the only decent speaker alive today is Francis Butagira, the UPC Mr. Speaker.
Because he went to Ntare
No,
school.
Mr. Butagira, not because he went to Ntare school, but in spite of his going to Ntare school because being UPC so disciplined. The man is as religious as a priest and as a bishop, and yet he managed the parliament in a manner in which he was a real father in the household, and yet that was a parliament that was very, very hotly operational, because that's the time when the witches were in the bush. DP had one leg in the bush, another leg in parliament, and you could say a fairly divided parliament, but not more so. That parliament, Comrade AWICH, was possibly the more difficult parliament in recent times. Actually, the only second most difficult parliament after Botiwan parliament. Why? Because the composition of the opposition versus the governing side were sort of nearly balanced, but in a way, DP had about 40%, just under 30% anyway, of parliament. So it's fairly strong presence in a two-house assembly. In that, you find issues being rigorous. But currently, with the NRA with nearly 80% support, considering the fact that some members of the opposition, according to Chichakulanyi, on their payroll, including some of those ones including from Lira on the payroll. You know, it's really not a big business. So you don't have to shout. You don't have to massively match this case. But forget about it, just like AWICH said. It is just a terrible house. 500 members of parliament legislating rather poorly, because I can tell you, the MP for Nagongera, tell me one thing in 2023 that you have done to me or associating with me in Nagongera of Toro in my constituency. Absolutely zero. And I will tell you, to my people in Nagongera of Toro, absolutely zero in terms of members of parliament. Because what I expected of the member of parliament from Nagongera in the last parliament, the last 12 months, was to stand up and talk about Nagongera Health Facility, Kisoko Health Facility, Morkiswa Health Facility, the crookedness of the road, the other bridge broken, and not because he is asking for this to be done, but legislating nationally and questioning where the money is, why the money for health is 1/10 of those on president's office, why the money for education is not catering for school facilities, demanding from Mrs. Museveni why the local school, actually in Morkiswa Primary School, which is next to the ENA representative in my area, you know, I think no child got a Division 1, meaning under NRA, the possibility of a child coming from Morkiswa going to Ntare School is zero over the next 5 years. Just think about it. Pathetic performance.
So in all of this performance, and Major, if you'd like to come in a little bit there, this whole conduct of business, and I also want you to speak about the leadership. How do you see that, and how do you think we are going to have to make it better when we have people standing in the house and feeling like everyone else, everything depends on them, and not the mandate of what their positions are in that house?
Well, but first of all, you made comment about what went in the social media about the speaker talking to that MP. They cut it off. I don't know what the other members of parliament had said. Remember, I don't know, it was so horrible that could cause emotion of the speaker. Because, of course, there are some people who can make horrible utterances.
Actually, if you don't know, can I actually help you on that? Interestingly, I was in another program with the member of parliament, an NRA member of parliament, and he actually told me, in defense of the speaker, I must say this, he actually said that many of these legislators provoke my beautiful sister Nita, so that by the time these things escalate to that level, it will have been unmanageable. So, as a matter of interest,
so what had he said?
No. In this case, I don't know. But I'm saying this.
I'm saying the emotion. I don't know what could have provoked that emotion. But generally speaking, the feeling was that it was uncourteous. It was not the decorum, and it was not the normal diplomatic language expected to, because even if the MP is talked about honors and stupidity and whatever it is, I think as a speaker you learn to control your emotion. And Tulyahabwe has always said he will control his emotion, but this time it was the speaker. You still are bound by the decorum to call him honorable member. Honorable so-and-so, please.
Even if you're throwing them out of the house.
Yes, say, honorable so-and-so, please do. You have watched motions even in South Africa where there's high emotions. You still restrain yourself as the speaker and you talk with decorum, with courtesy, with honor to the honorable member. So people felt it was kind of an emotion. So I don't know whether this emotion expressed, because some people are saying that is how he's treating people. But I have no other evidence. If that is it, then it shouldn't be, because as a speaker you're expected to have decorum, courtesy, and diplomacy and respect. Now, about other business, still you see that normally there's what is called the order paper.
Yes.
It is difficult for an item to get on that order paper. I think, and then some people have complained that items on the order paper actually disappear. You find you are on number 8, then you go to number 10, then you move to number 15, eventually it vanishes. All that talks about the business in the house. let me also now take this advantage. My colleague talked so much about Butagira. Francis, of course, went to the Great Imperial School. But also remember, Francis was a judge, not only a lawyer, but he was a judge of High Court before he became a speaker. So this decorum and courtesy we are talking about, he was already used to it in court.
He was cultured.
He cultured already in it. He had been a judge of the High Court, and he was really up to the task. But let me also talk about my vice chairman, Kigongo. He talked about it. You see, you are saying Kigongo it doesn't deserve to be that. What happens is, in constitutional history, when a legal regime of a government takes over power, it issues what is called legal notice number 1. Now, even the Rugumayo you were saying was not elected. Rugumayo came to power by legal notice number 1 of 1979.
Yes.
When Amin was overthrown.
And there's a national consensus.
And that legal notice, it is you to measure it, but it was a Moshi conference, so who says it was consensus in Moshi? It was even outside Uganda anyway. It was even outside Uganda. So, Butagira becomes, Rugumayo becomes a speaker by legal notice number 1 of 1979. Legal notice number 1 actually means we, the people today, we have overthrown this government and therefore recognize this as the government. And it is binding in law. All constitutional experts believe that. Now, the same thing with Kigongo. When we took over power, NRA, legal notice 1 of 1986 established a legally established government. And therefore, the parliament then was called the National Resistance Council, the legislature. If Museveni and NRM had wanted, they could have chosen to rule by decree without hearing any views. But a body was formed called NRC by legal notice 1, which became the parliament. And later it was expanded by election. I remember I voted in Entebbe because we were NRA in Entebbe. We voted Dr. Matovo. Dr. Matovo was by then the head of virus research. He still lives up to today. So we voted Matovo by lining up. So NRC was expanded. And it brought sanity and peace. I can assure you Kigongo did a good job. I could see the man sit there from morning to evening without going for a short call. And it brought sanity. The economy picked up, the country revived, there was peace and security until Lakwena came. So what are you saying that Kigongo didn't do the work? Is it because of legal notice? Legal notices are legal constitutional regime change all over the world, including the Rugumayo that you are thanking. You also came by legal notice. No. Therefore, I have no problem with Butagira and Kigongo. They duly deserved it, only that I have already raised in principle the retrospectivity. Yes. Or the double pay from consolidated fund, but they did a fantastic job. So that to me it could do, but the conduct of business, including issues on order paper and the number that we have spoken and the entrance to the house, of course there are issues that keep to be discussed.
You wanted to say something?
I pass it on to my brother here. You know, this legal notice number 1 thing.
79, which you are okay with
79
it? You are okay with it?
Was a national consensus, because it was supposed to be national consensus. Nobody questions that. This one of NRA losing elections, instead of going to court, to go to Luweru, break people's necks, come here, play with your fellow friends, the Okelos, you know, dodge them, take them to Nairobi for a walk while you're being reorganized. You
are saying nobody questions. Do you think the Amin regime was happy with it? Amin people were not happy with it. So how do you say it is consensus?
The Gaddafi group, but come to think of it. So then after that, these guys come to power, and then they banned political parties, you know? These NRAs, they ban political parties. You cannot call that a legitimate party. But the exception I take is this. The idea that because Chigongo was sitting in the National Assembly, you know, thinks there was peace. No. These guys, you know, do you know what NRA did? Museveni, sometimes we just forgive him. He's got so many questions to answer. You know, this Wuno or Mucholi, in the streets of Kampala, I was in Makerere University, you know, when these guys become Mucholi, just because you look like whatever kind of stuff, even if they could do a Mucholi because they think Mucholi could also qualify for me either an ex-soldier or executed person. So anybody who hates you will just come Mucholi. So that happened. It is under this funny NRC thing of Chigongo that I was in exile. We were targeted because we were old names. We were targeted because we were UPCs. But people were targeted simply because they were saying no singing to NRA, you know? So is that the thing to praise? And then pre-Lakwena, the NRA started targeting actually people as well as March, April, you know, May actually 1986. As well as that, people of northern Uganda, the one northern Uganda, as Coin and Lakwena. No, these guys deliberately targeted this. But I'm putting it in context to qualify, to demystify the idea that, oh, because the Gongos came and said peace came. No, peace didn't come. What happened in my Tororo never happened in the meantime. In Nagongera, there was even one case where is a mass grave where allegedly 3 people were buried in it and one of them was still breathing. And I'm told people asked for this NRA to get this person.
3 is not mass. 3 is not mass.
No, if you know, so I know you're a soldier. That is how insensitive soldiers can be. So instead of actually saying that, because 3 that is not bad. You know?
Mass.
Not mass.
What
is it? What is it?
You check on the dictionary definition.
So that is how bad these guys have got. Do you know what? We just hope that we conclude this year, start 2024. Mr. Museveni, go and pray, ask for forgiveness, ask for some of us to continue getting the strength to heal and forgive, so that we're able to rebuild the Republic of Uganda. Starting tomorrow with the Rogers. Roger, before we came on to the show, we were having a conversation, hoping that you're a young man, we want to see you married and settled, so that from next year you were able to begin to rebuild. You know what doing nappies can be, so that you pray that a future UPC government can make sure that we provide health services, so you don't have to worry about cost of health, because at the moment cost of health, private health is very, very expensive, particularly for young couples like you.
Speaking actually on that very note, as we do get to reach the conclusion of today, I wanted us, this is definitely going to be the last show we have this year, so I want us to look at the aspirations for next year as we move into 2024. What do you think are the issues we need to focus on as a country? Say, for example, if UPC given was in government today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things are the ones we would focus on in the year 2020.
And then which will focus on Mr. Museveni's health.
Please.
No, public services, which is primarily, quite clearly, I hope that in the next few days and weeks, we'll get my matter resolved for the leadership of the party, so that then I start the year, hopefully official as president of the party. I'll be then focusing very much in reorganizing the party, rebuilding, bringing it together, and giving space to mainly young people to take over the leadership of the party away from me in the next several years to come. But so that's very important. But number 2, that when we do that, I really hope that I'm able to be working with leaders with other political opposition parties and possibly teach some of them how to do some of these things, because we're substantially experienced. But I also hope that will move us to working across the political divide, including with our friends in NRA, that we begin to have a conversation towards the national political consensus to see how best we can negotiate a post-Museveni Uganda for our children and children's children. Generally, that's on that side, very important. But number 2, I hope that the outstanding questions of missing people is resolved. The outstanding people who are in detention and is resolved. These business of security services beating people unnecessarily is resolved. The question of sanctions, pending sanctions, does not send NRA crazy, so that maybe people are able to review personal responsible actions, people particularly in public offices. Then beyond that, I hope then that we are able to review our spending, so that this nonsense of 3.5 trillion shillings, which includes money for nappies in Museveni's office, is stopped, so that we're able to focus on the traditional areas of health, public education, agriculture, infrastructure, including rebuilding Nagongera Road, rebuilding Mulanda Road, and sorting out the potholes in Kampala forever, not because the Nana Line movement meeting, wherever, is coming into the streets of Kampala. You know, But again, after that, then focusing on the environment. Environment is extremely important. That is something that doesn't get much attention. Climate change is real. I was having tea, a meal actually. A friend of mine bought for me a very nice meal the other day, a sitting member of parliament, and he came from Rwanda the other day, and he was, whoa, comrade, the smartness and the neatness of Rwanda and the organization in Kigali, you just feel like wanting to remain there. You know, and I tell him that, you know, I told you guys, we've always told you guys that NRA is a failure. Let's join UPC so that we're able to rebuild Uganda going forward. So the environment thing is an extremely important agent. So things as basic as actually the neatness, because, for example, our capital is already the pothole capital of the world. The dust is so huge. I've got a friend of mine who's a medical doctor who predominantly practices abroad. And every other time he comes to Uganda, he says when he spends 2 days in Kampala, he's a Ugandan, spends 2 days in Kampala, he falls sick because of dust. So these things need to be able to deal. But beyond that, the younger guys need to begin looking at Mabira, need to be looking at reforestation across this country, be looking at protecting the environment, I mean, particularly protecting our swampy areas. And then maybe you guys as young guys, particularly in the media, but also young guys in academia, beginning to have a conversation about alternative means of livelihoods. Because part of the things that are pushing, particularly in swamps, for growing of rice in rural parts of Uganda, is simply because land is getting shorter and shorter in supply. But people are now thinking that growing crops more for cash rather than for livelihood. So it's putting pressure on that. But finally, I hope that without prejudice, the Balalo leave actually land alone. They leave Lango land alone. And I don't want to see them in Agongera. Basically, Balalo should go back to wherever they are, you know, farming their land. There's one chicken guy who said, we are not Balalo, we are basically cattle keepers who are part of an association of cattle keepers in Acholi, forgetting that actually once upon a time I had huge amount of cattle, Teso has huge amount of cattle.
I really hope that we'd have time to also talk about that issue. I have my own reservations because I do not know what then it means for someone, Muganda in Western Uganda. Should we also say, you know what, please go back to Uganda because this is Western Uganda? Because what does it
it's important. No, I think you're right. It's important you say that. You realize that I was putting it, and it's good you said it so that I qualified with the disclaimer.
Please do.
No, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the Muganda in Western Uganda. There was never a problem with anything wrong with the Mulalo in Kitgum or in Agongera. It is simply all of a sudden taking your practice to Kitgum and taking pieces of land by force. There were Balalo in Agongera when I was a young kid. By then you had not been born, and Museveni was not the problem that he has been, you know? These guys put their igloos and looked after cattle and did their thing. Their cattle and other people's cattle was not a problem. No, but it was not that these guys went ahead and occupied people's lands. And those days they didn't even use spears. But now they use guns. Where are these guns from? And these days, all of a sudden, from cattle keepers looking for land for cattle to land buyers. So how do now cattle keepers want to become gross landlords who occupy a whole district for land? Where do they get those monies from? NRA has got an agenda that Museveni knows. Mr. Museveni, you're an elder, you've accumulated lots of money, you've had a huge amount of privilege. Please, sir, just use Christmas, meet young Jesus, review your conscience, and simply come to the recognition that this Balalo thing of northern Uganda or anywhere else will not work. The Balalo that are looking for land in northern Uganda have the same rights and privileges as the Balalo of Karamoja. So if you want to treat the Balalo of northern Uganda like that, we want to treat the Balalo of Karamoja. We bring them to Ankole Kato Corridor, those places where UPC built for nothing. Join Babiha, my vice president, minister of defense. We do those things. So that's my point to you.
Yes,
so,
I understand.
So it's about actualizing and normalizing this thing. No, the Balalo thing is a project, not about cattle keeping. The citizens of this country ought to continue living side by side with one another, and I welcome the Mulalo to Nagongera, and I welcome the other Mulalo to Kotido, and we live side by side with one another. For the record, UPC was the first party in government to invite, with compelling the British to allow the Banyarwanda, who were subtly associated with some of these other things, to Uganda. Meaning, we are the party that accommodates foreigners. But we don't do these things at the expense of ordinary Ugandans, nor do we turn people become our tiny little investors. And on conclusion, this nonsense about Pineti coffee must stop.
I'm going to start timing us.
No,
I'm not getting enough.
No,
time.
I want him to conclude all at once. So you can continue and also finish.
Anyway, let me conclude with the little time that we are given.
No, let's
You have time.
I will
my
be timing next time.
Yes, let him conclude altogether.
He has concluded.
Give his.
No, leave conclude.
Now, there are a few things I left behind that I need to talk to about this year ending. I must say I travel abroad in the interest of the party, and in West Europe, that's why we don't hear a lot of complaints, because even in UK, where we met members of parliament, we talked to them. When the issue about Uganda came up, a member we met stood up on the floor and defended Uganda. So I'm very happy about that. One thing is that we have been crying about human rights torture by states, and we have always said that state operatives are personally liable. Last week there was rounds about the torture of soldiers who were beating somebody that allegedly stole a helicopter. I mean, a motorcycle. I'm sure you people know that the soldiers were put in court-martial, dismissed with disgrace, and sent to jail. And that is what we mean by saying we don't condone torture. Just last week.
But that is one case in
yes, bring us more evidence. Now, I also wanted to comment about the utterances of ministers on roads. I don't know whether this points to the caliber of our cadres as ministers, or others are acting dishonestly to bring down their other colleagues holding other portfolios. I don't understand. But I just like to remind our viewers that as a government, ministers are bound by what is called cabinet collective responsibility. That a decision taken in cabinet binds all. And therefore, by extension, a mistake of one minister binds all. That is why even at the party level, because we are the one who marketed the manifesto and they voted for NRM and we formed the government, that's why we also take responsibility. I would be saying I'm in the party, I don't care what happens in the government. So by extension, we are taken. So I don't understand ministers who make comments like in passing, as in jokes, about the inabilities or failures in other docket.
There are also citizens who should be.
Yes, but they are bound by cabinet collective responsibility. I wish they raise their views in cabinet. Because even a failure in Ministry of Health, even the Minister of Work is bound by cabinet collective responsibility. A failure in Ministry of Health, even the Minister of Education is bound by it. So I am worried about, because now it is Mao the other time said this own thing. Mohanga is saying our own thing. Kadaga is saying our own thing. So I don't know if this is how the cabinet is going to be working. But I would think that cabinet is bound by cabinet collective responsibility. Because at this rate, then we are going to end up seeing chaos. Everybody saying his or her own thing. And yet there's a principle called cabinet collective responsibility. They have the right forum to say it. So this kind of comments in jokes, in the passing, I would thinking, is it the caliber of the people that we have? I would think the Kadaga is of high caliber. Is it said to undermine colleagues holding other portfolios so that the other colleague is seen not to be working? I don't know. But I think cabinet is guided by cabinet collective responsibility. Now,
as we look into 2024,
now 2024, my expectations are our relationship with the World Bank is normalized. We remove that sanction. Our foreign relations with the West will be phased out. Whatever debate that we have, would improve. I know there are people who have gone to court over homosexuality and all that, but I want us to be at peace with them. 2024, we should continue to implement our manifesto and see how far we have gone, because we are 1 year to election. We should fight corruption in 2024. We should improve the well-being of the people of Uganda. That is my expectation in 2024.
The one thing that I could compliment in context with a small disclaimer, actually, Commander, which as an official of the party, of the NRA organization, has got very specifically authority in the normal democracy to speak about their party members, how they behave, where they've sent them the legislative assembly. I just thought actually, so actually his points should be taken quite seriously by his colleagues. However, of course, it's my interest to see them messing themselves up. However, I would also I would also say from an analytical point of view, Comrade AWICH, it may actually be the case that your regime is so sunk, which it is, that many of these guys are grandstanding come Christmas, and they're seeing how much criticism from the public, and they're trying to opportunistically stage themselves with the, quite correctly, side themselves with the views and public opinion. Okay, so be on the right side of public opinion, if you like. You could see it like that. Muhanga actually sort of surprised me, coming out of all those people. But once that actually is followed by my dear sister Kadaga, who's fairly senior in the regime, but for Kadaga having been beaten up a bit by the contest for the speakership last time, it's possibly not surprising. Normally in democracies, particularly for people like Kadaga, they would now be emerging as the leaders of wisdom in their respective political organizations who are able to take positions and challenge the system, both in private and in public. But where I slightly don't agree with you, Comrade AWICH, is actually, it's actually healthy in a democracy for ministers to make their public opinion known, except in a way, in a manner in which you could simply say that, look, these potholes are a disgrace, we need to be able to improve on them, something along those lines, rather than the manner in which they did.
Yeah, they're saying it in passing, like a joke, despising government, the way they said it.
Please say your concluding remarks.
Yeah. No, I just hope that next year is one in which civility prevails over anything else, and that the majority of Ugandans feel that it's their responsibility at every level, including particularly in political parties. I want to say this again, that young people get much more engaged, get much more constructive, move away from the sides, reject the idea, particularly of the political elite, who stand and their job is to critique what OCHIENO and AWICH have said, rather than saying what is our positions and what do we do. I'm just encouraging younger people to get much more interested in politics, much more involved in politics, get involved in political parties, participate, seek leadership positions, and run with the whole thing. But while doing so, they should make sure that whatever it is, that the dearth of public money is checked, because our debt ceiling is uncontrollable, and most of the borrowing is now just to do luxuries, to give money to people who almost certainly don't need.
All right, thank you so much. And
my last word is that we thank all Ugandans who have been alive this year, and wish those who have died their soul to rest in peace, and to say that next year we shall continue to engage you honestly and frankly, and we shall endeavor to do more research on information that we don't have, so that when we come to this media, we talk with you from an informed position of authority, and we are honest to you, so that we keep the country one. Right. So see you next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. We thank you for always sparing time to come and speak to us, the young people, to learn things. That informs how we move forward and how we contribute to the collective efforts of making sure that our community and society does grow. One other thing I had much interest in is that Investors Protection Unit of the President, State House.
What is that?
And I hope the State House Investors Protection Unit, but I hope that is what we'll begin with the next year. Just to,
the joke of the end of the year.
Just to make some sense of it, what does that mean? We have anti-corruption organs at almost every level. Why do we need to do that, especially at a time when they're saying they're merging some agencies to make sure that there's no replication and duplication of mandates? But that is for next year. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much. My name again is Tulyahabwe. This, I believe, is our last show for the year 2023. Thank you so much for always coming along, for being a part of this journey, and for making time to always be here. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a very prosperous New Year.